recent debut of WWE's latest faction, Retribution, it's got me thinking about wrestling factions from past and present, and I've decided to collect a whole list of my favorite all-time factions. Now, obviously, as you'll see with this list, I wasn't around watching wrestling back in the 80s or early 90s, so apologies to great factions such as the Four Horsemen, Hart Foundation, Nation of Domination. I'm sorry, I didn't feel like it was fair to include those, given that I didn't really watch their rise. With that being said, how's it going, everyone? This is SES Vince from the Smack Rob podcast, and these are my top 10 favorite wrestling factions of all time. Number 10. The Wyatt family. The Wyatt family is a case of wasted potential, in my opinion. They were something different. They were a cult leader faction. We hadn't seen that in WWE probably ever since like another faction on this list. It was great. The only issue with this faction was that the leader, Bray Wyatt, never really succeeded in recruiting or converting guys into the Wyatt family or winning big time matches. Now we have Bray Wyatt as The Fiend / Firefly Funhouse. So maybe, given the fact that The Fiend has targeted Alexa Bliss, maybe he starts creating his newer faction, and that one gets a chance to prosper. Number 9, The Nexus. The Nexus had an amazing debut, probably one of the best debuts I've seen as a wrestling fan. And the craziest thing, I wasn't even watching live when it happened. I remember I had like church or some kind of family activity, and I was not able to finish that episode of Raw. By the time I came back, I just saw the ringside area just a complete mess, destroyed, and I'm like, who the hell did all this? The original 8 Nexus was consisted of the original 8 competitors for the NXT Season 1 game show, led by Wade Barrett. They had Daniel Bryan for like one night, and then he got kicked out for choking Justin Roberts with a tie. Dumbest reasons ever. Slowly, the thing that killed off this faction was their WWE versus Nexus match at SummerSlam, where WWE, and in this case John Cena, basically buried them and all the credibility they had on that pay-per-view. They tried to recapture it, but Wade Barrett was never really able to topple John Cena. They tried to force him to join the faction, where he only just did hijinks to go ahead and try to like eliminate them and attack them from within. Eventually, leadership changed with CM Punk. He created the new Nexus. Then there was like a spin-off faction called The Core, led by Wade Barrett. It was a mess. Number 8, The Shield. Now, there's not much to really say about The Shield here. They're 3 of the biggest names that WWE pushed hard to the forefront. They debuted at Survivor Series, helping CM Punk beat Ryback, putting him through a table, and ever since then, they were like the hottest thing in pro wrestling. Roman Reigns is like arguably the top guy in the company because of that faction. Seth Rollins is probably the best thing on Raw, one of the best things going on Raw, and it's because of the Shield. And Dean Ambrose, aka Jon Moxley, he's the AEW World Champion. These guys, all 3 of them were WWE Champion. All 3 of them were WWE Champion on the same night. Their accolades are deep. They're a very decorated faction of the 2010s. And shout out to Kurt Angle, who was a member for a day. Number 7, the NWO. NWO is so low on this list because, again, I was not really watching WCW back in the day, but they were so popular, so cool, that even in wrestling video games, DVDs, even like to WWE, like you see that NWO shirt. Like they created so many spin-off factions. They had the Wolfpack, NWO Hollywood, LWO, you know, shout out to Eddie Guerrero right there. Great faction, solid debut, led by he who shall not be named, fuck Hulk Hogan. Great faction. They had like 50 million members, and all of them were just as good. I'm looking at you, Virgil. I'm looking at you. Nonetheless, like I said, I wasn't really a WCW guy. I was more so watching WWE's product. And when they came over to the main company and WWE's NWO just didn't resonate, they tried to like add guys like Big Show, X-Pac, Booker T, Shawn Michaels. It was not good. It was not what it was supposed to be. And, you know, Kevin Nash, just quads wouldn't hold up. NWO is an iconic faction. They had to be on this list. I just couldn't put them too high because, again, I never really watched their stuff. Number 6, D-Generation X. I know I'm gonna get some flack here for saying that I don't really like watch WCW, and I have DX and NWO to the greatest factions, if not the greatest factions of all time, at 6 and 7 respectively. But this is my list of my favorite of all time. And I like DX. Their hijinks was good, especially with the original DX of Shawn Michaels, Chyna, and Rick Rude and Triple H. Really, really good. The DX Army led by Triple H, which included also X-Pac and the New Age Outlaws. Again, great stuff there. I even like their like newer run back in like 2007 when it was Triple H and Shawn Michaels just being old dads doing like these corny jokes. I thought it was cool too. I enjoyed all of that kind of DX. However, the rest of these guys, I've actually watched their rise and were more prominent in my wrestling fandom as a child and now as an adult. So with that being said, DX, no matter how great you are, these other factions just resonate with me just a little bit more. Number 5, the Straight Edge Society. Now this one had to be on the list, given that the fact that my name is SCS Vince. That's where I got my name, was SES, the Straight Edge Society. That's where I got my PS4 gamer tag, or at that point I guess it was PS3. And it just translated to all my social media. So again, quick shout out, follow me on Twitter at SES Vince. This faction was perfect. It was led by one of my favorite wrestlers, CM Punk. He was a Chicago guy. He was what the Wyatt family were, or like he was like a cult leader. He's Charles Manson type guy. He would get people in the ring, shave them bald, and have them pledge allegiance to the Straight Edge Society. Like it was like the craziest thing that was happening back in the day. He had like a whole sermon to open up the Royal Rumble at one point. Fucking CM Punk's a fucking goat. This faction, just like I mentioned with Nexus, Wyatt family, wasted potential. I feel like it could have been a little bit bigger, better. They weren't allowed to really like prosper that way. Number 4, the Undisputed Era. Undisputed Era had to be on this list. I wasn't sure how high I wanted to put it up there. I didn't want to come off like this newer generation wasn't watching wrestling back in the day. These kids, they don't know what they're talking about. You know, shout out to the Horsemen, man. They were like 4 great wrestlers, 4 friends that hung out together outside of the business and were legit friends and great wrestlers individually inside that ring. And if that doesn't describe the Undisputed Era to a T, I don't know what does. They're all great in-ring talents. Roderick Strong is probably the best worker in that faction. Adam Cole has charisma for days. He's great on the mic. Kyle O'Reilly, all he has to do is do a fucking air guitar, and I am in love with that man. Bobby Fish, great mustache. All these guys are fantastic, and being the fact that I'm the NXT guy on the podcast, it makes sense for me to include this faction on here, even though they're relatively newer on the list. Number 3, the New Day. Again, like we said, 3 main factions. Are they really a faction? Are they more of a trio? You know, there's a fine line here. Some people would agree that 3 people could be a faction. Some would say it has to be 4 or more. I'm here to tell you I don't give a fuck, because the New Day are one of the best things going. I'm include them as a faction because they're great as individuals, as a tag team. They're the modern day Freebirds. So with that being said, New Day just ticks all the boxes. They were great as heels. They're great baby faces. They push merch. They're entertaining as all fuck. They put on fantastic matches, and they're legit. There's chemistry there. And they're the only faction in this whole list that has their own podcast. So fuck anybody that hates on the New Day. Forget anyone that ever wants them to split up. They should never split up. They should retire together. They should all just like go off into the sunset as a trio. They all have their own charm and specific thing they bring to the table. And they're a case where you can't really pick one. They're like your children. You can't really pick a favorite. Even though I'm pretty sure there's some people out there that have favorite children. Number 2, Bullet Club. Now this is when they're going to get some hate. This is where I'm going to get some hate, because you guys are going to look at me and be like, really? You're going to have DX and NWO so low on your list, but include the Bullet Club so high up at number 2, no less? Look, I was not watching the rise of the NWO. I was not even watching the rise of DX that much. I was just going back and watching pay-per-views, watching highlights. I was born in 92. That puts me at like 8 years old by the year 2000. So their greatest hits were just that, greatest hits. They were like a montage video for me. Yes, I was cross chopping back in high school and in middle school and elementary school and getting in trouble for that, just like everybody else. But there was just something different about Bullet Club's Too Sweet. They're my generation faction. They combine the cool elements of D-Generation X and NWO and wrap them all together. Without NWO, without D-Generation X, there is no Bullet Club. And the Bullet Club actually, you can argue, help inspire and create Undisputed Era. And if it wasn't for the Bullet Club, we wouldn't have All Elite Wrestling. Members of the Bullet Club and the Young Bucks and Cody Rhodes, they decided to do All In. All In spun their child and hence creating AEW. So if it wasn't for Bullet Club and Bullet Club's popularity, we wouldn't have the alternative to WWE. So even if you're a hater of Bullet Club and feel like they shouldn't be high on this list, they created their own fucking wrestling promotion via their existence. And on top of that, they weren't even an American stable. They were over in New Japan, and New Japan has fantastic stables, just like Chaos and LIJ. But Bullet Club transcended Japan, carried over to the States. With that being said, Bullet Club deserves to be high up on my list. Number 1, Evolution. Now, we talked about how the Shield were like great faction. They were decorated faction. All 3 of them were world champions. Well, look at Evolution. It was led by probably one of the best guys of the Ruthless Aggression era. He was a great heel. I legit hated him. And that's something you're missing in wrestling nowadays. You're not supposed to like the heels. You're supposed to hate them. You're supposed to despise them. And that's exactly who Triple H was. If you look past Triple H, you have the GOAT, the legend, Ric Flair styling and profiling, giving them a solid look. They look like solid players. They looked amazing. You wanted to be a member of Evolution. Randy Orton, probably one of the greatest wrestlers of my generation, still going hard to this day. It's probably the best thing going in 2020 in WWE. Then you have the Animal Batista, who not only transitioned away from Evolution, but was able to be his own guy, be a top champion, Blutista, whichever version you prefer. He was amazing. He was great. And he just fucking gets it. And not only that, he was Drax as part of the Guardians of the Galaxy inside the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I'm a big comic book guy, so that just earned him huge brownie points. All 4 of these members are great in their own way. There's literally no weak link. So that was the list, guys. What did you guys think? Did I miss some factions here and there? Is there one that you feel like was a little too high or too low on the list? Let me know in the comment section down below. Tell me, what are your favorite factions of all time? Go ahead and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the SmackDown Podcast YouTube channel. Check out our Patreon. If you like this kind of content, you might be able to get it a couple days in advance. So go ahead and join our $5, $1, or $10 tier. Again, turn on the bell notification so you know when a brand new video is going live. My name is SES Vince from the SmackDown Podcast, and we'll catch you guys next time for more Top 10 videos.